Hello there, I'm Dr. Tom Cutting. Welcome to my channel, where I review films and provide a psychological analysis of the characters in the films. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.
What happens when you are responsible for the greatest scientific breakthrough in human history, but in the process you transport others and eventually yourself to a hell dimension from which there is no escape? When you dedicate your career to science and engineering, but you might as well have spent your time screwing around with Ouija boards and communing with that creepy goat man dude. This is the story of a grieving scientist who inadvertently opens a portal to a hell he likely did not believe in. He does not see the catastrophe that awaits, but that's okay, because where he's going, he will not need eyes to see.
Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This is a psychological analysis of fictional characters in a film for educational purposes. This is not a diagnosis of the actors portraying these characters.
Our story begins with a timeline that eventually tells us when your story begins. The timeline starts in 2015, and while this is a decade in the past for us, in 1997, when this film was released, this was the distant future. We learn that 2015 is when the first permanent colony was established on the moon. Well, right out of the gate, it's looking like real life is way behind schedule, but I digress. We continue to learn that commercial mining begins on Mars in 2032, something we are unlikely to actually accomplish 7 years from now. In 2040, the deep space research vessel Event Horizon is launched to explore the boundaries of the solar system and promptly disappears without a trace after it reaches the 8th planet, Neptune. We are informed that this is the worst space disaster on record. We then learn that the film is set in the year 2047 because the timeline reads 2047. Now, our first scene is that of a ship drifting around a planet. Presumably, this is the missing Event Horizon in orbit around Neptune. We see that the ship appears to be in disarray and unmanned, with various items chaotically floating around, including a wristwatch. In addition to being a brief product placement, this is actually an interesting nod to the history of space exploration. The watch we see floating through the ship in all its CGI glory is an Omega Speedmaster, aka the Moon Watch. These were worn by the crew of the Apollo missions and were instrumental in the safe return of the Apollo 13 mission, as Tom Hanks used his Speedmaster to time a crucial 14-second burn for re-entry. The Speedmaster remains one of the few watches qualified by NASA for spaceflight and is the only watch qualified for extravehicular activities such as spacewalks and moonwalks. Anyway, we float through the derelict ship and see a mutilated man screaming as he floats in front of a window before we are transported out of the eyeball of Dr. William Weir. It was all a dream. We see Weir awake and get ready for the day. He has a shrine of pictures of the same woman, and we are led to believe that this is a spouse or partner and that he misses them. He then ambles over to look out a window, revealing that he is on a massive space station called Daylight Station. We are then introduced to the Lewis and Clark, a search and rescue vessel. Its mission is top secret. We do not get to know what they're up to just yet. We learn that the crew of the Lewis and Clark has indeed been called up on a mission and is about to embark, and that Dr. Weir is going with them. Presumably, this means that they were docked at the Daylight Station. We see the crew making their preparations to enter stasis before embarking on the 56-day journey. You ever fall asleep at the beginning of a long flight and then wake up when the plane is landing? This is basically the same concept. In the next scene, we see Dr. Weir awaken from stasis before everyone else and begin wandering the ship. He encounters his late wife, whose eyes turn all scary as she tells him, "I'm waiting." We then learn that this was another fun-filled Dr. Weir dream as he wakes from stasis for real this time, freaking out in the pod thing. And who wouldn't? In the next scene, Dr. Weir and we, the viewers, are introduced to the crew. Captain Miller, Medical Technician Peters, Communications and Executive Officer Lieutenant Stark, rescue technician Cooper, chief engineer Justin, the ship's physician DJ, and the pilot of the Lewis and Clark, Smith. Dr. Weir reveals to the crew that they have journeyed to Neptune to investigate a distress signal from the Event Horizon, which disappeared in 2040 during its maiden voyage to Proxima Centauri, Earth's nearest star. We learn that the public had been told that the Event Horizon was a research vessel that blew up in space when its reactor went critical. The true nature of the Event Horizon was highly classified, that it was the culmination of a secret government project to create a spacecraft capable of faster-than-light travel. Dr. Weir explains that this seeming violation of the cosmic speed limit is made possible by folding space-time and creating a wormhole to instantaneously connect two distant locations. He illustrates this by folding a piece of paper and jamming a pen through it. Weir reveals that this is called a gravity drive and that he designed it. We learn that the maiden voyage had been going as planned, but the moment they fired up the gravity drive, the Event Horizon disappeared. Until now. Dr. Weir plays for them the distress signal that was picked up from the ship. It is incredibly spooky business, consisting of wailing, screaming, and a voice saying, "Save me," in Latin. The Lewis and Clark descends into a lower orbit in order to dock with the Event Horizon, and we are able to see that it dwarfs the Lewis and Clark in size. Before boarding the ship, a scan is conducted and they learn that the Event Horizon is still pressurized, but is too cold for the crew to be alive unless they are in stasis. After boarding the ship, they search for survivors and find ominous signs concerning the fate of the crew. Peters finds a deceased crew member missing his eyes. Even more spooky business. Justin finds the gravity drive and it activates, at first emitting a blinding light before turning into a black hole-looking thing. Justin does the only sensible thing and sticks his hand into it, resulting in him being sucked in. Subsequently, a shockwave is emitted from the gravity drive that breaches the hull of the Lewis and Clark. Fortunately, they had tied a cable to Justin before he went in and shook hands with the Void, and Cooper is able to fish him out, though Justin is now unresponsive. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew is forced to evacuate from the Lewis and Clark onto the Event Horizon. The crew is able to bring all the normal functions of the Event Horizon back online. This includes the gravity drive. They also learn that they have a limited amount of oxygen. Smith sets about repairing the damages to the Lewis and Clark, while Cooper and Dr. Weir argue about the gravity drive. Weir says that it's not possible that the gravity drive could have activated itself. However, Cooper knows what he saw. Captain Miller cuts through this with a straightforward take. Something happened to Justin and damaged the Lewis and Clark. They need Weir to tell them what he knows about the gravity drive. Weir explains that the drive uses 3 large magnetic rings that, when aligned, create an artificial black hole that allows the ship to travel to any point in the universe. Magnets. What can't they do?
Magnets, how do they work?
The crew finds the last video log entry from the original Event Horizon crew, allowing them to see what happened when they turned on the gravity drive, and it seems congruent with the earlier spooky business. The crew finds themselves being treated to vivid hallucinations of their greatest fears and regrets. Peters sees her kid in a tent with gross legs. Dr. Weir is in some sort of circuit board tunnel and once again sees his late wife, who tells him, "Forever." Captain Miller is investigating the gravity drive and hallucinates a burning man who we later learn was a subordinate whom he abandoned to his death on a previous mission. The crew discusses their unusual experiences and how they seemed far too real to have been hallucinations. The crew members begin acting aggressively. A sense of tension continues to rise. Captain Miller firmly asserts his authority to hold on to order amongst the group. Stark tells Captain Miller that she believes the ship is alive and is reacting to the crew's presence, and that this is the cause of the hallucinations. Captain Miller expresses skepticism of this. A violent banging begins on the outside of the ship's hull, causing indentations in the metal, as if something is trying to claw its way in. Meanwhile, Justin wakes up from his comatose state and walks into the airlock and closes the inner door behind him. Peters pleads with him to come back into the ship, but he tells her that he was shown horrible things and won't go back there. He then hits the button initiating the sequence to open the outer door, causing him to immediately snap back to his usual state of consciousness. He has no idea why he's in the airlock, but pleads for them to open the door and let him back in. Captain Miller is able to save Justin, but he is briefly exposed to the vacuum of space. Captain Miller tells DJ the strange way the ship seems to know his fears. DJ reveals that he spent more time analyzing the distress signal and discovered that the Latin message had not been "save me," rather it was "save yourself from hell." The two speculate that the ship has been to dimensions beyond the known universe. Peters recovers more of the video log, and we see that the previous crew had violently attacked and cannibalized each other. The previous captain can be seen chanting in Latin while holding his own eyeballs. This explains why they found the ship looking like an absolute crime scene. The Lewis and Clark has been repaired by this point, and Captain Miller declares that it is time to head out, as the mission had been to rescue the crew and recover the ship. But the crew is dead, and as far as he is concerned, the ship killed them. Dr. Weir protests leaving his ship behind. Captain Miller informs him that his intent is not to leave it behind, but to destroy it with missiles once the Lewis and Clark is at a safe distance. Weir ominously tells him that the ship won't let them leave. The gravity drive uses visions of her son to lure Peters to her death. Dr. Weir discovers Peters and is soon sucked into his own vision, where he witnesses his wife's suicide and is forced to look on helplessly. She then tells him that he will never be alone again and gives him the spooky eyes. We then see Weir back in the ship next to the gravity drive, clawing out his own eyes. We then see that Dr. Weir has smuggled explosives from the event horizon and hid them on the Lewis and Clark. Smith finds the bomb, but it is too late and the Lewis and Clark explodes. Cooper is working on the exterior of the Lewis and Clark when the explosion occurs, and he is thrown off into space on a piece of debris. He elects to vent the oxygen from his tanks as a means of propulsion back to the event horizon. Back on the event horizon, an eyeless Dr. Weir attacks DJ and hangs him up by his skin in some sort of deep space Blood Eagle scenario. Captain Miller and Stark encounter Dr. Weir. When asked about the elephant in the room, his missing eyes, Weir says, "Where we're going, we don't need eyes to see." Dr. Weir reveals that the ship went to another dimension of chaos and pure evil, and that when it came back, it was alive. Weir then begins the sequence to open the gateway. Cooper then comes floating up outside the window, and Weir shoots a harpoon at him, breaking the window and causing explosive decompression of the ship. Weir is sucked out into the void of space. Miller manages to pull Stark with him and close a hatch that seals off the rest of the ship. Cooper joins them through the airlock. Justin is still in stasis since his free solo spacewalk, so we have 4 members of the crew still with us in total. Miller devises a plan to blow up the corridor that connects the 2 ends of the ship. The ship is designed where the gravity drive is in the back and is connected to the forward section by a long corridor. The corridor has explosives strategically placed as part of its design. In the event of an emergency, the corridor can be blown up, allowing the front of the ship to carry on as an effective lifeboat. Since the gravity drive is set to activate, separating from it will allow the remaining crew to avoid going to the hell dimension. The ship floods itself with blood in a scene that is reminiscent of the hotel lobby in The Shining. Miller activates the explosives, but is chased the wrong way down the corridor by the specter of the subordinate that he had hallucinated earlier. He winds up in the gravity drive, and the Burning Man reveals himself to be Dr. Weir. If Weir were chicken or steak, he would have perfect grill marks. Weir shows Miller the hell dimension that awaits, and we reach maximum spooky business. Weir throws Miller around and tells him that the crew belongs to the ship now, and everyone will be coming with him. Miller manages to grab the remote and detonate the explosives, separating the 2 halves of the ship. We see the front half of the ship with Cooper and Stark shooting away while the gravity drive activates, creating a black hole that the rear part of the ship disappears into, along with Weir and Miller. In the next scene, we learn that it is 72 days later and a rescue mission is boarding what remains of the event horizon. We see the rescue team find Cooper, Stark, and Justin in their stasis pods. Stark is the first taken out of stasis. One of the rescuers removes his helmet mask to reveal that it is Weir. We then see Stark waking up screaming and learn that this was a dream. Cooper attempts to reassure her while a member of the rescue team calls for a sedative. And so concludes Event Horizon. I want to begin the analysis by identifying just what in the blue blazes is going on in this film. Now, it has been explicitly spelled out for us that the event horizon traveled to a dimension outside of our known universe that was chaotic and pure evil, and that it came back alive. The alive ship is motivated to get Weir to turn the gravity drive back on and send it back to hell, and it wants to take the crew with it. An interesting question to ask is why the ship returned to our universe after 7 years. Why 7 years? If you transport a spaceship to hell, does it automatically get spit back out after 7 years? Like, did someone turn the gravity drive on again after 7 years to transport the ship back to our universe? If members of the original crew wanted to come back, they presumably would have done so right away if that was an option. They had some volitional ability once they were in hell because they sent the message in Latin to save yourself from hell. This also tells us that they viewed this new dimension as best avoided. On its face, it seems that the film has a materialist concept of hell rather than the traditional religious one. However, if we analyze some of the details, this place seems closer to the spiritual than the physical. Now, as it happens, a comic book prequel series called Event Horizon Dark Descent was published this summer. Though it requires strain from strictly looking at the film, if we consider this to be canon, or some form of headcanon, which incidentally always sounded to me like an unfortunate neurological condition, it supports the notion that this dastardly dimension is hell in the traditional spiritual sense. I will speak more on this in my analysis of Weir. From what we are shown in the film, another feature of the hell dimension is that the crew members are tortured in brutal ways. This implies an intelligent force of some kind is doing the torturing. This aligns with the characterization of this dimension being pure evil, as evil implies choice and behavior. We can only speculate about what this intelligent evil force is. It could be nefarious actors that inhabit this dimension. It could be that the dimension itself is sentient, or it could be the devil himself. Given all this, I think the best explanation is that the ship was sent back by the powers that be and is being used to lure more people into hell. Or maybe the gravity drive worked as intended and Alpha Centauri just turned out to be a horrible place to visit. There is a strong consensus in the field of psychology that spaceships cannot be alive. Therefore, I cannot proffer a psychological profile of the event horizon. However, let's start our analysis with Captain Miller, and then we'll get to Dr. Weir. Captain Miller is your classic military man. Maybe not quite as over the top as Lee Army, but he is unquestionably buttoned up and down to business. And it should be said in this case that sometimes stereotypes exist for a reason. The stern, no-nonsense leader is required for a functioning unit, particularly in life and death situations. Miller balances this well with holding himself to just as high of a standard as he does his crew. He commands with authority while leading through example and giving his life for those he has authority over. In fact, he doesn't just give his life, he goes to hell to save them from that same fate. He makes the ultimate sacrifice for his remaining crew. Captain Miller never forgave himself for the crew member he couldn't save. The evil inhabiting the ship knows this, and we see it when he refuses to leave Stark behind after the hull is breached. In the end, he knew that sacrificing any hope for his own escape from hell was the only way to save his remaining crew, and he saw this sacrifice as a way to atone for his deep regrets. If Captain Miller ever makes it back from the hell dimension, he must be rewarded with some sort of Ultra Medal of Honor. As for Dr. Weir, while he is portrayed as the villain of the story, I believe he is the primary victim who is singled out for his vulnerability caused by the combination of his grief and the fact that he put all he had into creating the event horizon. Now, Dr. Weir is far from perfect. There is certainly an element of hubris manifested in Weir's creation and how he revels in harnessing the most destructive force in the known universe through his gravity drive. One would think that Jurassic Park would have impressed upon him the dangers of playing God, but I guess not. While the information available to us about Weir's past is limited, Dark Descent provides some compelling background to the Doctor. We learn that his wife had been struggling with her mental health while he was giving all of his time and attention to his work on the event horizon. Now, something important to talk about here is the difference between fixing and supporting. Weir was not responsible for fixing his wife's mental health. No spouse is responsible for fixing their partner's depression. But, and this is a big but, this does not mean that you should abandon your significant other to just figure it out. In a healthy, loving relationship, One cares about their partner and supports them, encouraging them and helping to facilitate changes that will ultimately be healing. Weir was not responsible for fixing his wife's mental health, but he did fail to be there for her. We cannot know for sure whether she would have remained alive if he had been more present in their relationship. But in general, people are significantly less likely to press the off button when they have support and connection with their loved ones and close friends. Dr. Weir's grief led to him pouring himself further into his work. In this sense, the ship could be the only thing that he has left, and losing the ship would mean that all those late hours at the office, and not at home, would have been for nothing. His grief and his need to hold on to his creation were ultimately leveraged against him, and he never stood a chance. In fact, the evil forces at play were working on him from the onset of the film, as we see in the opening scene of Weir's nightmare. Indeed, this notion is further supported by Dark Descent, which portrays Weir as essentially being groomed by a demonic entity called Paimon, who ultimately possesses the ship and Weir himself. The YouTube channel Marvelous Videos provides an excellent and more in-depth overview of Dark Descent that is worth a watch. I will include a link in the description of this video. We ultimately see Weir become the villain of the story, but it is not actually him. It is just his visage. What we see by the end as Weir is no more real than any of the other hallucinations experienced by the crew. In the end, grief is its own kind of hell. For those who grieve, inventing interdimensional gravity drives is probably best avoided.